90-minute on thinking skills where we did 90 minutes of different thinking skills. But these are pretty useful. These are pretty good. Some of them you will be doing anyway. But what I want you to think about is the extent to which you are doing them on purpose. So I needed to find something where I could practice, well, you could practice each of these thinking skills, but in a way that joined it all together. We're all thinking the same thing. And also I wanted the challenge of doing something that was really quite boring, and to show that if you interrogate it with your thinking, you can make anything really, really interesting. So what I came up with was something we all know about, just a paperclip. So I'm going to take you through a number of 16 different strategies, probably more, I think, where we think about a paperclip. Not that you want to become experts on paperclips, but because then you've got the examples and you can take and apply these examples to whatever subject matter you might be addressing in your schools. So that's the plan. All of these, each of these thinking strategies, I'm going to come up with 3 questions for each one. So recalling is the first one, thinking on purpose, recall. So there are 3 questions. I'll tell you which one we're going to do. When was the last time you used a paperclip? When did you first use a paperclip? And number 3, draw one with your eyes closed. Summarizing as a thinking skill. So this would work. Describe the least amount of words what a paperclip looks like. Write a 3-step user's guide. Let's get a bit sciencey. Describe how a paperclip works using the words torsion, elasticity, and friction. So symbolize, we've gone from summarizing to symbolize. How can you take what you know about something and put it into something else? So if you'd done the 3-step guide before, I could have got you to draw it. So you're representing it in a different way, in a non-verbal way. And notice a bit like the circles and the square and the circle, the more I can move away from what I've called for years now, the tyranny of syntax, that learning has to be taken in and expressed out by words in a sentence, usually written in a neat and grammatical way. We're capable of so much more learning than that. So by the symbolizing in a way that we can move into drawing and the symbols into non-verbals helps in all sorts of ways. Not only helps those who are struggling with the writing, but also shifts the thinking of those for whom writing isn't a struggle. That means they've got to start thinking in a different sort of way. Come up with 3 other names. So now we're playing with words again. Tell someone who's blindfolded how to use a paperclip. So again, you've got to we're using words, but we've got to come at it in a different sort of way. Fit into 10 different categories. Now I could say 3. But why? Why can I go for 3? Because that's easy. If I ask for 10, 10's harder. And the first 3 or 4 answers will be quite easy to come up with. It's a metal thing, it's stationary, it's things in my pocket, it's things I keep losing. It's by giving you more of a deadline, more of a target that we really stretch your thinking. And if 10 was easy, I could say 20. And it's the 17, 18, 19 and 20. They're the hard ones. A bit like when you're doing workouts, when you're doing press ups and things, it's the ones at the end that are the harder ones, but that also do the most good, because they really, in the way that they damage your muscles so your muscles grow back stronger, it stretches your brain in a way that you didn't think possible. And once you've stretched your brain, it doesn't go back, especially as a child. What you've also got by me giving you a target, I could say just come up with some different categories. Yeah. If I say, right, you've got 30 seconds for 10, then what we're doing is hitting what's called high challenge, low stress. My first book years ago, Essential Motivation in the Classroom, we looked at what are the keys to having motivated learners. And one of them was this state what's called flow. Flow is a fantastic book by a researcher called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Nina will put that down in the chat box. And he wrote this amazing book, Flow, which is about how you get into the flow. Is like being in the zone. When you have a lesson and you think, God, that's gone quick. It's break time already. You've hit flow. Or when the children say, no, I don't want to go on break, miss, I want to carry on, because they're in the zone. And you get that by having things that are high, the challenge is high, but the stress levels are down low. Not zero stress, we need stress. Stress is a good thing, keep us going. But manageable stress, so high challenge. So you've got 30 seconds, I want 10 things. If they don't get 10, it doesn't matter. If they go over 30 seconds, it doesn't matter. But you stall out from the beginning to get that flow state. It's a bit like the ones we started with, but we're categorizing now. In the category banana paperclip, what else is in that category? Banana paperclip, and what else? Or what comes first? So we're sequencing as well as categorizing there. This is a good creative thinking tool. This shifting perspective. You're looking here and then suddenly you look over there. And that's a really powerful thing to do. That's one of the things that I think makes you, I notice with the THUNKS when they say, oh, my brain hurts, because you're flicking that perspective. You think you know where you are. You think the world is ordered. You think you're sorted. And then suddenly it isn't, because you've got to come at it from a different way. So, okay, we're thinking about paperclips. Everything in your head said paperclips are to do with stationery and offices and school and order. And then suddenly we're going, okay, how would a bricklayer use a paperclip? Would a hairdresser use one? Or how could a paperclip make you happy or sad or excited? Notice how you've got to flick your thinking. We're still on paperclips. How would you use a paperclip to teach empathy? By the way, how would you use a paperclip to teach empathy? There you go. Isn't that lovely? Love that. You could get a whole lesson out of that. Okay, this is a skill that you do use in school, but let's build it. Let's make it simpler. What would the 3 parts of a paperclip be? So you break it down into its component parts. But then you go sideways with it. The banana question, you're still analysing, but you're just being playful with it. I remember I said the university work research at the beginning, if you're playful, the learning is better, the thinking is better, you're taking the stress levels down, there are no rights or wrongs. One of the things I've noticed with my THUNKS especially is the children who join in when there are no rights or wrongs, when they never speak in a traditional lesson where it's about guess what's in the teacher's head, or can you remember, or have you got the answer right. It's really liberating working in this sort of way, but it does make your brain hurt. Look it the other way. Why is it different? What's it like? Induction is taking the little thing and thinking about the big thing from it. So just by looking at it, how do you think a paperclip was made? So you've got this thing in your hand, you've held it in your hand, you've had these things for years, and suddenly you've got to think about, you've got to induce what the factory looks like and what's in the factory that these things come from. Where do they come from? These things that you take for granted. Maybe you've never thought before about how they're made. What does it tell you about paper? So if you, linked to that, if an alien suddenly discovered a paperclip, what conclusions would they make about human life based on the paperclip? Thing to the little thing. So, true fact, from 2011, be interesting whether it's gone up or down in recent times, but we'll come to predictions later. What could you deduce from the fact that 11 billion paperclips were used in 2011? We've had the paperless office since the 80s. Or, there you go, Norwegians used it as a symbol of resistance, true story, in World War II. Why do you think that might have been? And British invented it in the 1800s. Why do you think? What could that tell you about paperclips? What could it tell you about the British? What was going on in the 1800s? So the first 2 are you calculate and you can come to an answer. They're convergent thinking. There are answers there. You can do it in your head, you can make guesses, you can get your calculator out, you can do Google. What I recommend with Google, those of you who are allowing children to access Google in the classroom or maybe at home, is that you do what's called the Google pause. One of our lovely independent thinking associates, Dr. Matthew McFall, Matthew Magic, his work was around wonder and curiosity as a way of engaging and motivating children and improving their learning. And one of the things we sort of discussed was the idea, rather than going straight to Google, as you do the Google pause, you stop and you think about what you think the answer might be. Then you do your search. So the search becomes the way of checking to see whether you are right or wrong, or how close you are, or what other people, as opposed to, I don't want to think, I'm just going to go straight to the answer without, I'm going to bypass the thinking stage. You know this from creativity. 12 uses for a paperclip. This is sort of creativity 101. If you had to redesign, bearing in mind there are, there's 80 odd different designs for a paperclip, and there's a link to the different sorts of paperclip. You'd be amazed. How would you redesign it? How would you double paper? Here's brainstorming. Then let's get your marketing hats on. 30 seconds in the chat box. How would you double paperclip sales? A different sort of thinking now. Synthesizing. Easy for me to say. Bringing 2 things together and putting them together. 1 + 1 = something else. Not 2, but something else altogether. There's a good creative thinking. What if you cross this with that, you get that. The famous ones are, you cross a surfboard with a yacht, you get a windsurfer. You cross a cinema with an airplane, you get in-flight entertainment. There's so many things that we take for granted that were two unconnected things in the past that somebody's thought, if I put that with that, I've got something totally different and something very special. Think about the phone. The phone has become, used to be just the thing you spoke with, and then it become combined with everything else. Back to bananas again. How would you entertain a small child with a paperclip and a banana? So you now make it into a child's entertainment, child's toy. If you're a paperclip artist, what would you create? Predictions. I've talked a little bit about predictions before. Learning becomes the process by which we check whether how valid our predictions are by predicting a whole lot more. And I say it with simple math, simple arithmetic, getting them to, rather than having to do the arithmetic all the time, but just give them a sum and say, what do you think it might be? Make a prediction. And then now let's do the sum and let's see what happens. Or sometimes I do it in the old days when I used to be in a shop with coins. It would be, giving them the change, and I just make a prediction as to how much change I think I would get, rather than doing the maths in my head. And it's amazing how often I was right or almost right just by doing the prediction first and doing the actual maths, the actual arithmetic second. So will the number of paperclips being made go up or down in the next 10 years, and why? You could divide the class into two and say, okay, you're going to predict it'll go up and tell us why, it'll go down and tell us why, and then swap over. I said when I showed you the World Economic Forum skills, this was 2018. I'm not sure the impact of COVID on it, but I could ask you, we could have done a prediction exercise there. What do you predict will be the changes to the World Economic Forum based on the experiences of 2020? That would be predicted. Whether you're right or wrong doesn't matter at the moment. We're just doing the thinking before we get to the facts. We're going to be logical later. We're doing the thinking first. What about the price of paperclips? Maybe draw on some economics knowledge there as well. When would you next think you'd be using a paperclip? So we've gone from sort of some big macro stuff, when we're bringing it back to you. When do you think you're next going to be using it? Evaluating. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Why? 5 reasons why it should be named the best human invention ever, or the worst human invention ever. Or David Ogilvy they call him the father of modern advertising. It was a great copywriter, said about Ogilvy and Mather years ago. He used to say it's a very dangerous instrument. A really simple one. See, think, wonder. 3-step process. You give them a stimulus. It might be a picture, might be a video, could be a tool, an artifact, could be anything. And then one at a time, you take them through. First see, then think, then wonder. This picture from the internet came out as a result of me doing an image search where I typed in Operation Paperclip. So without leaping for Google straight away, although you can do later if you wanted to, what questions, that's all we're thinking of, and you don't need to worry about where the answer might be or if there is an answer, what questions come into your head as a result of that picture? It's a really simple tool for getting kids to think. I'll take you through it. We'll do a quick 8-way think, but the best way for you to know how good it is just to give it a go and see what you think. But the principles are the same. It's still around questioning. What I did was to take Howard Gardner. I talked about Harvard University and Project Zero. Howard Gardner is sort of leads there, runs that thing. And I take his multiple intelligence. Multiple intelligence is not and was never anything to do with learning styles. People lump them together, which meant it got dismissed. It's nothing to do with learning styles. It's to do with our potential, the potentialities that we have. And Gardner says maybe calling it intelligence, it wasn't the right thing to do. It's really about what, as a human being, we all have some of this potential within us. To what extent in the classroom, in schools, are we being allowed to develop our different potentials in a number of different ways? That's what we're talking about here. So these are the 8 intelligences, the 8 potentials. And what I did, I just took them all and just simplified it by using these words, and then turned it into that. We'll do one on paperclips. So, fingers at the ready. We'll work our way around, no particular order. Remember, there are no rights or wrongs. You don't need to think about where you might find the answer. It's purely about the questions. Put it in the chat box. We'll do what we're doing. We'll do 30 seconds on each one. So, words. What word questions can we ask about paperclips? So, words and paperclips, what questions come into our heads? to what extent are these the questions that are being used in the classrooms in your schools? And not just by the teacher on the children, by the children on the teacher, and by the children on the children, by the students amongst themselves. And notice with this sort of rubric of questions, how many of them are conditional? How might others see this? What would that lead to? Have a guess. We talked about guessing earlier. What may happen next? So there's lots of predictions. There's lots of let's see if this is going to be, as opposed to, do you know the answer to? Can you remember this? So you're still working towards an answer, but it's a lot more diversion rather than just quickly as possibly converging on the right answer. Some of you have used THUNKS. I know they've been around for quite a while. We produced, to make just another way of using it, we produced a tin of THUNKS last year. There are, I don't know, 30 odd THUNKS in here. You can sort of play around with them as cards, put them on desks, give them out. Is your mind the oldest part of you? Is it okay to bully a bully? You can use it for ethics. Have you stopped becoming you yet? You can use it for neuroscience and Buddhism and all sorts of things. Is there a safe way to die? You can get controversial with it. Is a pregnant woman one person or two? That one still messes with my head. It's easy to teach people to be creative, to think, uses for a paperclip. It's easy to unleash the creativity in people. But then I realized that there was something that you have to do before you get to that point. And that's to just refuse. Just say, I'm not going to do it the way that I've always done it. I'm not going to do it the way that everybody else does it. I'm not going to do it the way that's the obvious way. I'm not going to do the first thing that comes into mind. I'm not going to do the way that's that we've always done it. No, I'm not. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'll think about that in a minute, but we're going to refuse.